With our first free character since the launch of the game, being aerorover, being introduced in the 2.2 update, a lot of you must be wondering, is it worth it for me to put resources into the aerorover? Well, that's what I'm going to be answering in this video by giving you the aerorover's biggest pros and cons. When talking about the aerorover, the very first thing I want to address is the fact that aerorover unlocks an entirely new mechanic. Because yes, aerorover is the first ever character within wutheringwaves to give us access to aero erosion. Now aero erosion is our second negative status, with the first one obviously being spectrofrazzle. So this means that we already have a little bit of a taste of what to expect out of the aero erosion playstyle. During the livestream, they also revealed to us that the new 2.2 Sonata effect will be able to buff aero damage whenever you apply aero erosion with your abilities. This means that, much like in spectrofrazzle teams, aero erosion is more of a conduit to increase the talent damage of our characters, rather than being the real damaging effect itself. This means that there is very likely going to be future characters who would want to exploit aero erosion as a mechanic. And because aerorover is our first ever taste of the aero erosion mechanic, it is going to be our best dive into knowing what's happening in the future. Also, because aerorover's outro skill increases the amount of stacks of aero erosion that you can apply on enemies by 3, which straight up just doubles it in reality because the cap at base is 3, this means that aerorover is most likely going to be a meta character for any aero erosion teams until we get more 5 stars that exploit the mechanics, which in my opinion is probably going to be for a couple of patches. So building aerorover right now gives you a head start on building this entirely new archetype. Second of all, the aerorover already has a dedicated slot to fill within aero erosion teams, being the healer. It was said during the livestream that a bunch of Rover's abilities, mainly the Forte aerial attacks as well as the Liberation, is able to heal the entire team. This is very valuable, because with healing built into the base kit, this means that Rover's healing is much likely going to be a lot better than that of Spectra Rover. A lot of people complain that within Phoebe's teams, whenever they run Spectra Rover as their healer, they find it very hard to stay high on HP. This is because Spectra Rover's healing is honestly just kind of bad. But with aerorover having healing built in their kit, it means that aerorover is most likely going to have very consistent healing numbers, which are probably going to be enough to keep your entire team alive. This also means that even if they introduce an aero erosion sub DPS and an aero erosion main DPS, Rover will still be in the team because they will be your dedicated healer and will still be able to buff aero erosion thanks to their outro skill. And then the final pro for the aerorover is the fact that they are quite literally free. Not only is the aerorover free, their best weapon is also free. They're both given to you after the new main quest, and because we're talking about Rover, their sequences are also entirely free. It costs you literally 0 asterite to start building up your aero erosion roster because of the Rover. Being free is very valuable because it automatically lowers the requirements for any aero erosion team. One of Phoebe's biggest upsides is just how cheap she is to get going, which is in large part due to the fact that Rover is one of her best teammates and is always going to be in her teams. Having Rover be one of your best in-slot characters automatically makes any aero erosion character easier to get into because, guess what? It doesn't matter who you pulled for, what you pulled for, you are always going to have at least one teammate for a future aero erosion character. But now getting into the cons, I think you can probably already notice what the first one is going to be, being the fact that aero erosion has literally no use case as of now. Now, while I understand that we currently do not have access to aero erosion in-game yet, I'm certain to say that if it's anything close to spectrofrazzle in terms of damage output, it's not going to be worth building an entire team around just buffing aero erosion, at least in the 2.2 update. Much like spectrofrazzle, I think that aero erosion is going to be simply a tool that allows characters to do more damage with their abilities themselves, not be a tool of damage itself. This means that without the future aero erosion characters that we don't have yet, aerorover is going to have literally no teams on release. And when I say no teams on release, I really do mean it. Aerorover has nothing in their kit that prompts their usage over any other character. While Aerorover's signature weapon might have some aero damage shred, which can be used for things like GN and Alto, it is ultimately still going to be worse than running Verena or Shorekeeper. Or hell, it's probably even going to be worse than Baiji. Aerorover really is not that impressive of a character at launch, and is entirely banking on the fact that Aero Erosion gets more characters to exploit it in the future. You can compare Aero Erosion's current predicament to what Spectrofrazzle felt like before Phoebe. Phoebe was the thing that made Spectrofrazzle an actually good effect, with it being straight up just bad back during version 2.0. You've probably seen some Spectrover solo runs from back then, but that's not because Spectrofrazzle itself was good. It's because the tower explicitly buffed Spectro as an element, and the middle tower also had a Spectrofrazzle buff near the end of 2.0. So let's be honest here, without an Aero Erosion DPS, being able to apply Aero Erosion is not really that big of a deal. And that only gets worse when you look at the second point, being the fact that Aerorover literally can't even apply Aero Erosion without outside support. Spectrorover can at least apply Spectrofrazzle on their own, but Aerorover literally can't. All of the Aero Erosion application that Aerorover has within their kit is coming from converting other negative statuses into Aero Erosion through the use of their aerial skill. This means that because you're already using Rover in their team, the literal only way to actually apply Aero Erosion is with Aerorover and Phoebe in the same team, which means that, yet again, we have to wait for the future for Aerorover to actually do anything. And even then, we're most likely just going to see characters that are able to apply Aero Erosion on their own, making the fact that Rover can apply Aero Erosion less useful. Now, Aerorover does still have the Ultra skill, which I mentioned before, but if the Aero Erosion application isn't that relevant, that means that the value for Aerorover just goes down, and can be easier to replace. And then the final point that I have against the Aerorover is the fact that using Aerorover just gets rid of your Spectrorover and your Havoc Rover. Havoc Rover and Spectrorover are actually really good characters now. Havoc Rover was good since launch, just being a solid Havoc DPS, and us unlocking their S6 in version 2.1 just made them even better, now being one of the better characters to use in a Tower of Adversity, and even having some very solid use cases within Whimpering Wastes. Havoc Rover's value is undeniable, and Spectrorover, while being entirely locked to Phoebe comps, is still very strong for that reason. Until we get a future Spectrofrazzle character, Phoebe is going to need Spectrorover, so if you have a Phoebe on your account, Aerorover might just completely not be worth it for you, because we don't fully know when the next Spectrofrazzle character is going to come. They even share a Vigor count in the Tower of Adversity, so it's not like you can just use Aerorover on one team and Havoc Rover on the other, because you're still consuming the Vigor from one Rover. So overall, in order to play Aerorover, you're sacrificing a different Rover that can bring more value to your account depending on what your account looks like. But that's just my thoughts. Are you excited for the Aerorover? I'm probably going to build them for the pure reason of their animations are just really sick. Definitely my favorite of the Rovers when it comes to animation and probably gameplay. But we're going to have to see in the future how good Aerorover is going to become over time, because currently Aerorover has literally negative value to your account. I think building Aerorover still is pretty safe if you're trying to go for Aero Erosion teams in the future. Considering the fact that we're getting Aerorover, it's safe to assume that Cardathea is also an Aero character, and her being the Sentinel Resonator, well, that just means she's going to be really good. So building Aerorover might be a good decision for the future. If you agree with me, be sure to comment down below. If you disagree, same thing. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, be sure to join my Discord. I'm pretty active in there, so I'll probably be able to answer your questions. But that'll be it from me. Peace.